do is that I have not welcomed our online people, and you're sitting there in your houses and offices, patiently watching and thinking you're ignored. You're not. We're thinking very much about you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from here, there, and everywhere. And we hope you're enjoying it. Now we're going to start with an electrifying topic right now, which is the launch of the district and borough level EV, that's electric vehicle charger network project. And it's about much more than just plugging in, as we're going to hear from Chris Pateman Jones, who is the Chief Executive of Connected Curb, and Tim Middleton, KCC's Transport Innovations Program Manager. Okay, so Chris and Tim, over to you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Hi everyone. So this is the District Borough Electric Vehicle Charger Network Project, which we've been calling it for the last 2 years, and then the marketing team at Connected Curb said, why don't we call it the Kent 600? So we're going for that. It's the Kent 600, which explains probably, well, it's a bit snappier. But Susan mentioned this earlier in her talk. This is a collaborative project, which frankly is, as I say, has taken a couple of years to get to this stage, but we're really quite proud to finally be being able to launch it and shout about it. But Kent's led this project, but actually, just as importantly, we've got multiple partners. So 6 of the districts in Kent and also Medway, Unitary Authority, and we've all been working together to ensure that we essentially can create one large charging network across the county of Kent. And we saw a lot of advantages to doing that. And it's, as I say, it's taken a while, but we are here, and I'm really, really pleased to be on stage with Chris to talk about it in a bit more detail. Lovely. So this isn't actually the first EV project that we've been doing in Kent. We've been running a few. This is certainly the biggest that we're launching at the moment. As I say, 600 chargers, as Susan said earlier, 150 locations right across the county, ensuring, frankly, that we touch all areas of the county. We're not precluding any areas. This is big stuff in terms of local authorities' networks putting out there. So we're really pleased. But we've actually been on a bit of a journey, I suppose, with Connected Curb as a company so far. It started with Dover District Council last year with well, it was this year actually, the golf. But last year it started when the golf was due to happen in Sandwich. And that project, you'll see the chargers are up and running and still working, and that was launched really for the golf. And then we actually procured Connected Curb services on a separate project called our Parish Charger project. Some of you may be aware, essentially putting chargers in those rural areas that are notoriously quite difficult to get to. And we're rolling that out at the moment. And if anyone has any suggestions of areas, come and talk to me, and really happy to look at that. And as I say, this is kind of, I suppose, the latest round. So we know that ultimately we need to cover the entirety of Kent and Medway. We know that one of the biggest barriers that people have to switching to electric vehicles, and that's both consumers, personal drivers, and businesses, is a lack of public charging network and a consistent, usable, maintained, affordable network at that. And we know that's a real problem. So this project really was to try and hit it on a big scale, frankly, and not just mess around at the edges, but to really see if we can make a real difference. And I think we are going to do that at the scale that we're at. This combined with all the other projects that we're doing, and I know some of the other district partners involved are doing as well, certainly should meet our local authority share of the market here. And the private sector obviously do a lot of work around in this area as well. We know, frankly, we all know COP26 is happening, and we've got to do this quickly. The rollout, and part of the reason, frankly, that we selected Connected Curb to be the partner is the speed at which we can roll these chargers out. We've got a 2-year window to get them out in the ground, but I think, well, I'm putting words in mouths here, but I think we'll go a lot quicker than that. So that's really exciting. And ultimately, well, we've got the winning hearts and minds statement here, but we know that this has to be a good, usable network. As soon as, if they work, I don't think the public particularly mind who the charging provider are, as long as it's maintainable, affordable, and actually works. So as I say, I'm really pleased to be up here talking about it, but I'll pass over to Chris, who can sort of give his point of view of working in the project.
Thank you, Tim. Shall we switch? So we're very excited to be here. So thank you for having us. And there's quite a lot of my team who are here, and we've got a stand out there. So if you want to understand any more about what we do, then please do come over and see us. Just to say briefly, what you're seeing there on the screen is 2 of our charging points. Those are our geckos. They sit on parking posts. But what you're actually only seeing is the socket. The charger actually sits beneath the ground underneath that metal plate. So underneath here is where the charger actually sits. And we do that for one of the reasons that Tim actually mentioned. So we think reliability of charging networks is fundamental. The key failure point on most charging points is the socket or the cable. And so by separating the socket above the ground from the charger beneath the ground, we can guarantee a far higher level of reliability than you might see on some of the other networks out there. Other, I guess, unique aspect of this is it's all made out of recycled materials. So that's all recycled plastic involved in there. So it's quite a nice sort of story in terms of what you're actually trying to do and living what you're talking about. Tim sort of touched on the fact that, well, I guess this slide sort of talks about the brief that we were given. So rural black spots trying to overcome that. The funding aspect. So the council wanted to try and deploy this with minimal risk to the council. So the private sector stepping in and actually funding this. That's one of the things we brought here. And then also trying to deploy in a way which was sensitive to the beautiful area that we're deploying in. So I grew up for a portion of my childhood in Kent. It's a very beautiful county and you have some very beautiful streets. So we wanted to try and deploy in a way which was sensitive to that, where we're not deploying big sort of petrol pump style units on residential streets. So what we've tried to do is develop something that's extremely visually discreet, considering that those are units that can do 3 to 22 kilowatts of charging. So they are high power pieces of kit. So you can charge your car pretty quickly on them. And then the other point I've touched on is, again, the maintenance of the charging points in rural areas is sometimes difficult. We've tried to design a system which is as easy to maintain as possible. So that's the brief on who we are and why we were sort of selected. I suppose now just to sort of hype up what we're doing here. And as Tim said, this is a collaboration, and it is, I think, one of the most ambitious we've seen in the country, and we would argue actually overseas as well so far. So it is a large network of charging points, and it has the option within the contract to be expanded. Certainly at the time that it was commissioned, it was the largest. There are others who are sort of snapping at its heels, but it is a really ambitious program with the intent that, again, this is something that will overlap with other counties across the UK where you'll have consistency of network. What I should also say is if other counties don't choose us, that is okay. We are OCPP compliant, meaning that's huge lingo, but it basically means that you can roam between networks. So we are focused on trying to deploy a network which users can transfer from wherever they are to use ours as easily as possible. So you don't have to have multiple apps, multiple cards and things like that. There are 6 districts involved in this. We hope there will be more joining. I think there's 7 mentioned within the contract, but there is potential to expand it. It is a mixture of 7, 22 and 50 kilowatt charging units. And again, those will be deployed depending on the need in the location. So we aren't going to deploy slow charging points where the car sits for 20 minutes, but we are going to deploy slow charging points in residential streets and in long dwell car parks where you don't need a rapid charge. Actually, you want to try and charge as efficiently as possible and minimize the impact on the grid. This is a long-term relationship, so it's plus 10 years, and that is designed essentially to recognize the lifespan of our kit and to mean that we can keep the prices as low as we possibly can to the consumer at the point of charging. And our aim with this is to try and tackle some of those issues. So we're trying to reduce inequality here. So this is targeted at those of us who don't have driveways. If you have a driveway today, EV actually makes sense already. You can charge on your driveway. The problem is a large portion of society in the UK just simply doesn't. So in urban areas, it's well over the 80% mark, but even in rural areas, it's actually far higher than you might think. So we're trying to deploy this network for people who cannot charge at home. Really important if you don't want to see a 2-tier adoption of EV, and if you're also serious about the leveling up sort of agenda. So really important there. The other aspect that we talked about is the disabled access. So we work with Motability, Disabled Driving UK to try and make our bays as accessible as possible. You'll have seen some of the announcements or some of the negative press for some of the charging networks in the last few weeks around disability access. We are not perfect, but we are now trying to look at that in all of the bays where we go and deploy, and we'll report on that as we go. The funding for this project comes from OZEV and also from Connected Curb, so private sector and central government funding. We will fund the project in its entirety if we need to. but we believe there are grants available through central government for that. And then we will also be actively working with Kent and the districts to be engaging the local population. So, and you might say, why would we do that? It's over and above our normal job. It's not really. It's actually fundamental. If we've invested our money into this, we want to make sure the charging points are used. So we are actively incentivized to actually go out and engage the local population. And we do that through a variety of different ways. My chief marketing officer is over there. And so if you have any questions around how we might go and engage the community, then please come over and talk to us. And then in terms of the deployment, we take responsibility for it all. So we work with the districts and Kent County Council to identify sites. We use a lot of data to try and identify that. So you might assume we would only be going after wealthy areas. Not really. Actually, we've got a long-term contract here. So more important than speed of adoption is actual utilization. So you can go into poorer areas sometimes where utilization of the charges may be higher. Really, the barrier you've got to overcome is to get the adoption curve to move slightly faster in some of those areas. So we use data to try and influence where we go and deploy. I think that's probably where I'll finish. I don't know whether there are any. Are we allowed to take questions? Are there any questions? Okay, very good. Thank you for having us. Come and talk to either Tim or I if you would like to know any more. We're always open to deploying more charging points, and the contract does allow for that, and we'll fund them.